DuckTalks is part of Res TV's network of podcasts. Check out res.tv for other great podcasts. It's the week of Saturday, December 1st, and you're listening to episode 41 of DuckTalks. Hey there. Welcome to DuckTalks. This episode's a little bit different. We've done this before in the past, actually with the same guest. A lot of times when it comes to interviews or having a special guest on the podcast, it can be a little difficult to schedule for all of us to be available. And for that reason, we haven't been able to do as many as we have hoped. One person that we have been able to have on the podcast before and to interview is Morgann Gicquel. Now, Morgann is the director of the Scrooge Mystery, which is the documentary about Don Rosa. We spoke with Morgann this past summer as he was finishing up the disc, the release of his film set for October. And October's came and gone, and the disc is out. So everyone is able to watch this film. You can order it at thescroogemystery.com. We have seen the film, and we were very excited to have Morgann on the podcast to talk about it a little bit further now that we've seen it and knew the content. I think the interview went really well. We had a fun time with Morgann, and he has something special for all of our listeners. There is a special promo code for thescroogemystery.com where you can get, it's actually a fun part of the interview, so I'm not going to spoil it for you, but there is a promo code if you're listening, and you can go to scroogemystery.com to redeem that code. I did want to point out that this is December 1st, and December is when we mark our calendars for the anniversary of Scrooge McDuck. Carl Barks' first story involving Scrooge McDuck was Christmas on Bear Mountain, and it was published in December of 1947. So this is the 71st anniversary of Scrooge McDuck. At DuckTalks, we're going to be celebrating all month long. We've got a lot of blogs planned, and although we may not put out 4 podcasts this month, we definitely will be very Scrooge heavy in everything that we discuss. I know we've got some blogs planned for the latest episode that aired this morning, as well as some of the more classic Scrooge moments. We're going to be reaching out online and asking you to respond with your favorite Scrooge moments. We're going to talk about these all month long. We're very excited about this anniversary, and this year, with DuckTalks and Ducktales and starting to read the Fantagraphics volumes and getting into the Carl Barks stories now, we've learned a lot about Scrooge in the last year, and we've got a lot of favorite Scrooge moments. We had a lot of favorite Scrooge moments before this year, but we have even more now. So we'd like to hear yours. We will be discussing those on the future podcast. We're going to be recording Monday night, so as long as nothing happens. Typically we record on Monday nights, and we would love to hear your favorite Scrooge moments. We'll read some of them on Monday as we get ready to talk about Last Christmas. How awesome was that episode? Anyway, I've rambled on long enough. I'm going to get to this interview. I hope you enjoy it. Hey there, Mitch and Pirate Steven here, and we are with Morgann Gicquel, the director of the Scrooge Mystery, the documentary about Don Rosa. Morgann, it's great to have you on again.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
We had such a great time speaking with you last time. Now, you were still in the post on the film. Maybe you had finished the film, but you were working on the extras and everything for the disc. And but now it's done and it's out. We've got copies. I've got it right in front of me. We've already watched the film. We're excited to speak with you today about it.
I am so excited that people are actually having it in their hands, and yeah, I do believe we just finished color correction, so it feels like it was yesterday to me, but yeah, that was like 6 months ago, I think.
Yeah, we're hoping by the time this podcast is out there that all of our listeners have purchased it for Christmas presents, because it's perfect Christmas stocking stuffer. I feel.
I actually, I have a discount code for your listeners, so
Oh,
Oh,
fantastic.
wow.
definitely plug that in for Christmas.
That's amazing. We have already heard from some people on Twitter who have received their copies and let us know. So that was really cool. There was one guy in particular, I don't remember who it was, but he tweeted at us letting us know that he heard about the documentary for the first time on our website. So that was really cool. Glad to get the word out. And so that other people can enjoy this. It was very educational for me, being a new Don Rosa fan. And as you know, in the time since we last spoke, Stephen and I have become big Don Rosa fans.
Yeah, we had you on our show, and we had just met, or I had just met Don Rosa, and I was coming at him from being a fan of the characters, and knowing them from the cartoons, and I loved his illustrations, and I thought it was great. But I was kind of the fan that he put that sign up there, up on his desk that says, "This is not DuckTales." And after this past 5 months after we had you on our show, we've completely got into the comics and read through the entire library of all of his stories. And I'm no longer this is not DuckTales fan that will meet him the next time I see him.
Yeah, I got to meet him at Dragon Con in May, and he could tell that I didn't know what I was talking about. You know, I was a new fan. I just read a couple of his stories, and I was excited about jumping in. And but it was great, and we owe that to you because you were insistent that we go ahead and start reading them.
I'm gonna blush now, but I do feel like there is a part in the film where Don Rosa says, you know, what I did, I also did it to bring new fans to Karl Barks, who invented the character, and I kind of feel that way now, in a way of, you know, I did my film also so people would discover Don Rosa and would read and rediscover all of his stories, and gosh, you're making me very proud right now.
Well, good. It was a success, no doubt. And we're coming across others who are starting to read the stories as well for the first time, and it's really cool. One thing I wanted to do as we get started, I've gone back and listened to that interview. I was telling you earlier a few times, and because I'm learning about the stuff you were talking about after the fact, and I'm like, oh, I remember Morgan talking about this. Let me go back and see what he said. But like I said, we were very grateful for you coming on and telling us about your film, telling us about your fandom, and telling us a little bit about Don Rosa. But I realized that we talked about you had an experience, I think you'd waited like 5 hours to meet him, but we didn't really talk about your fandom. Like, when did it start? And I know that for me, being in America, it's a little bit different because Don Rosa fans, you know, it's not as ingrained in our culture as it is in Europe. So how did it start for you? How young were you when you first read, Karl Barks and Don Rosa stories?
Oh, that's a good question, and that takes me back. I think I was 8 when my parents they basically wanted to introduce me to reading by magazines, and we went to the newspaper shop, and you'd have your comic books and magazines and everything, and they gave me a little allowance, like I would say. At the time, it was in francs that we don't have anymore. We're in the euros now. Mm-hmm. So it was like something like 20 francs, and could buy any magazine I wanted. And the Scrooge McDuck magazine, which is one of our most known magazines for children here, was the one that appealed to me immediately. Well, granted, they had a gadget, and they all like that. That was their thing. They always have a little, I don't know, water pistol or something to prank people with or whatever. My parents wanted me to pick the science magazines or, the literature magazine. And I wanted to have the Duck magazine because it looked fun and cool. And I read the first issue. There was no Don Rosa in it. It was just Karl Barks. And I liked it. I wasn't, thinking this is the best thing I've ever read in my life, but I liked it. So I bought it the next month. It was coming out every month. And in the second issue, there was a Don Rosa story. And that blew my mind because I think it was one of his very early work, the one where the Beagle Boys stopped time, and but only in a radius of like, I don't know, 5 feet or something, and you have everything that's frozen in time, and they use that to steal from Scrooge. And for the first time, there was a story for kids that didn't talk to me as a kid. That was clever. That was using science as a ploy. It was trying, like, I don't know how to describe it, but I didn't feel like I was talked down to, and that was very important for me when I was a kid, because I didn't like when things were just silly just because they thought as a kid I would not understand it. And I would read that story more and more and more, and each time I would read it, there was something more that I didn't see, a visual gag or anything. So I think I really got into Scrooge and Don Rosa at that time when I was, a kid.
Yeah, Don Rosa was doing Easter eggs when I didn't even know what an Easter egg was.
Yes.
That's one thing I've learned going through Fantagraphics volumes.
No, definitely.
So when was like the height of your fandom? Would you consider that now? I mean, you've kind of dedicated a good portion of your life now to it. Or do you think that there was a point where you were really into it, maybe even more?
Well, when I was, I guess when I was a teen, when I was like 14, 15, my parents still didn't understand my passion for the ducks, and again, they thought that I wouldn't be more fit to, I don't know, go into the science stuff. So that's when I discovered about the Life and Times, and I had never read anything like this. It was blowing my mind that someone would create such intense emotional stories with Disney ducks. I mean, granted, they're not created by Disney, but they still have that idea that it is just for kids, and it was like reading Lord of the Rings or reading any kind of epic journey, or the Odyssey, or any of those grown-up stories. And I remember cutting in the magazine every single pages of the Life and Times to create my own bound books, and to make my parents discover it and understand why I was being so obsessed with it. And they tried reading it. They didn't like it at first, but they got me for my birthday ticket to go see Don Rosa, because on the day of my birthday, on January 30th, he was going to be in France for the first time in 2005. And that was the best present that he could have ever bought me, and that's when it kind of all started, because I don't know if I talked about that last time, but he stopped doing drawings 5 people in front of me, and I always had at that time I was 15, and I was like, I will meet him again one day, and I will have my drawing. I didn't know I will have 12 drawings in the movie, but but that's when it all started.
He's in France now, right?
Yeah, it is. He is in Toulouse, in South France, and he will be in Paris from Monday to Wednesday.
Yeah, I saw the pictures that they posted on Twitter, and that line is just ridiculous, and exactly how you explained it. It's crazy over there for Don Rosa.
Oh, it's insane. I think that you have to imagine that when I got to America in 2011, where I was studying for film and everything, I went to see him in Baltimore, where there was 3 people in line. Felt really weird. Right. But then we went to dinner, and because he was so impressed that I had done all this way, and he was like, oh, and I already done some little videos on him, so we were talking about the project and everything. But this was very early stage, and I felt like I was with this rock star and just walking in the street, and nobody was, stopping him for autographs. I was like, my gosh, I need to text the entire Friends right now because they would never believe this.
It'd be worth a trip to a convention in the U.S. just to have that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I love in the documentary. There's a part where you're introducing yourself to him, and you're saying, and I've been following you around and doing all this. He's like, yeah, I know.
Yes.
I cracked up at that.
He's funny. He's witty.
There's actually two kind of in jokes in the beginning. The first one is that we start with are you finally ready for me? And that was a hint that the fans had waited for this film for 3 years. So the idea of starting the film with okay, we're ready now. Yes, we can. But obviously that part was also cracking me up. Of the yeah, I know you've been following me.
Picked up on that.
Definitely a stalker.
Yeah, I thought that was great cinematography there. If you were setting up your camera and then he's just kind of there in the shot, waiting for you.
Yeah.
I thought that was great.
Have I lost you there?
No, we're still here. Sorry.
That's okay. No worries.
I was thinking about something in the documentary that I'm going to try to hold back until we talk about it a little bit more. But the way it starts, I mean, it was really. I love that. That joke was great. Are you ready? So I'm realizing now the weight of that because we started following everything a little late. We're like, oh, look, this is happening in October. But other people were, waiting 3 years for the project. So that's really cool. I'm sure, I celebrated when I got my copy in the mail. I'm sure those people were really celebrating. I saw some people had cakes and everything.
Oh, really? Oh, gosh, I didn't see that. I've seen people with popcorn, which is how a film should be watched, eating some popcorn. But yeah, I mean, I've received so many emails and people, especially in France, there was a glitch in the tracking. So for some reason, for them, it told them that the DVDs were still in Jamaica and New York. So a lot of people were like, no, we're in France, not in Jamaica. It's like, no, this is New York. It's where the DVDs are. Yeah. But anyway, they received it, I think like with a week later than they were supposed to, but they were overjoyed to finally have it in their hands after waiting for 3 years and popping that DVD or Blu-ray in the whatever player they have, and I think that people are proud that this actually exists and that it exists with them. We could not have done the film. I mean, I've said that so many times, but we could not have done it without the fans. We had 85 production companies that I contacted for this, and 84 of them said no. And the one that said yes went bankrupt, so we couldn't go with them. Right. It's amazing to think that now these little discs exist because of the fan, and I'm overjoyed that they can have that little surprise in the mail and celebrate with it.
Yeah, and I love seeing pictures of people in line, in that long line in France right now, and you could see that at least one person has their copy of the Scrooge Mystery to get signed.
Yeah, it's really cool. I actually got some texts today from fans that were in that line, and actually it was a fan that came to my work on Friday to get it signed, so he would have both signature from me and Don Rosa. And it's just, I don't know, it's surreal but it's so how to say that, it's why I did it. Like I didn't do it because I just had a good project and thought, oh, that will be good for my career or whatever. I did it because I wanted to say to other fans, it's okay to like Scrooge McDuck, it's okay to like the Ducks, even though they're labeled for kids. That doesn't mean that that just kids can enjoy them. Everybody can enjoy them and create over it and make whatever they want to make over it. And as seen in the documentary, the Scrooge McDuck fandom is very creative, is very going out of their ways to do more comics, videos, music, sculptures, you name it. And that was my way to give back. on another point, you see in the documentary so many fans saying what they did with it and why they did it. And I didn't want to include myself in those fans because the film itself is what I did with my part of the fandom and how I gave it back to the other fans. And I'm really proud now.
Yeah, it was such an important project too, because I feel like if you wouldn't have stepped up and done this, a great bit of duck history would have been lost, and people wouldn't have known about it as well if you wouldn't have done it. Because we do get a little bit of Don Rosa biography in the Fantagraphics at the back of the book, but your documentary kind of strings it all together, and it's very well done and entertaining as well. And you get to really know Don Rosa from it. If it didn't exist, I don't think people. It'd still be that that thing in the United States where people would. He's kind of basically unknown, but now that this exists, and more people will be fans of him now.
Well, I hope so. But the thing is that when we started the project, there had already been two documentaries on Don Rosa. One was a house tour that you can find on YouTube, directed by Yano, that you can see in the film, which is what the title implies. They're filming Don Rosa through his house, and it's just like, seeing his collections and hear him talk about all of those things. The second one was a little more personal about the dark time of his life, but was also kind of biography of Don Rosa. And when I had the opportunity to do the Scrooge Mystery, I didn't want to do another, let's talk about the life of Don Rosa. We had to in the film because you wouldn't be able to understand how it all strings together if you don't have some pointers on how he got to be Don Rosa. But I never wanted to do something that you can't just read. I felt that the biography that you're speaking of in the Fantagraphics already existed in France and in various countries of Europe, where people already knew everything that there was to know about his life. And I thought how the Scrooge Mystery can add to that, or more importantly, how can it be different? How can it makes it evolve and makes you understand the man more than just read about him? And that's why we wrote a screenplay that included all of his interviews. Like I spent so many days and weeks to try and find all his interviews and kind of slice it up together and see where this part would go, how it would explain this, and blah, blah, blah. So I had all laid out in front of me. And I realized that what was most important was the emotion and not the information. And it's good to have it, and you can read about it, and we're giving some of it. But I wanted to focus more on how he draws, how, taking this color or this color, what does it mean? Not in terms of what he says, but you can see his hand shaking, you can see the colors bleeding, you can see that we're stopping on the portrait for some reason and finding a way to construct something where you can feel it. Because I think that documentaries are not there to be just news reports, or just something that's going to be like, in 1963, this happened, this blah, 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 and everything. I think documentaries are here to make you feel or live a life and make you understand stuff that you wouldn't understand before watching the film. I don't know if this one does it well. It's not my place to say. But I do think that that's what it aims to do. It's definitely not a history lesson. It's more of a, if you were that person, what would you have done?
I think it was a success. You said you can't say it. I think we can. I really did feel the emotion of it, and your film did pull on my heart on certain parts of his story, which I didn't know. Other than what I had read so far in the Fantagraphics library. By the time I watched this, I think I was in the middle of Volume 8, so I hadn't even finished Volume 8. So some of the story was new to me, but not just that. Like you said, I could feel that you were going for that sentiment. You wanted people to not just hear about it, but to kind of experience it, especially with Don sharing it himself. I was telling you before, my daughter has watched much of the documentary, not all of it yet, but she's watched a lot of it with me. And I think that's part of what grabbed her too, is that she could tell that, you guys were talking, you were talking about something that was more than just a comic or more than, just entertainment. And to hear about, especially that dark part of his story, and some of the stuff that went on with him determining that it was time to quit, because I'd wondered that. I didn't know why Don Rosa was no longer making stories. I knew that, or I'm sure he's still making stories, but not stories that we get to read. But I can't imagine he just cut that, turned that off. It's really interesting, and it did. I look at these pictures of these lines in Europe of people just waiting hours and hours, a full day, to be able to sit down with him. And, I see that, and I see the smile on his face, and I'm happy for him because of your documentary. And then I think back to my experience of meeting him at Dragon Con, and it's so different that I really wish I could do something to make it different here. And I think that was the goal of your project. And so I can tell you have succeeded, because it's a goal of DuckTalks to reach out to other fans and say, hey, look, we can be fans of this. This is something that we do need to get together and hit his table up all at one time. Let's all go at the same time one day and just allow him to experience that in America, because he doesn't get it as often anymore. Because it was very different meeting him. Dragon Con's huge, and they had moved his table to a different spot. He wasn't overly happy with it where he was. There wasn't a lot of traffic. There wasn't as much traffic back there, but he had people at his table. It wasn't like it was empty the whole time. But I got to spend a lot of time with him standing there. He probably would have preferred I moved on. but I got to talk with him for a little while, and I know people in Europe don't get that.
Oh, no, definitely. And whoa, I'm getting goosebumps with what you're saying. But I think, I totally agree that it's surreal, the difference between those two places. And I think that people will understand better what can be taken as bitterness with his sign, the Ducktale one, and the shock that he's experiencing between those two places. Mm-hmm. I think the documentary tries to reconcile those two sides and to understand what's really happening, and how crazy it is that this guy is a rock star in a continent and is unknown in another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Pirate and I were talking about it before we got on the phone with you. I get it now. I really do. But I mean, in all honesty, I didn't understand it. I was like, why wouldn't you, just be excited about fans coming to the table? But it's because it's not that he wasn't excited about fans coming to the table. To kind of add to the story, I walk up with nothing, and I'm just trying to chat with him. And I'm looking at prints, and it's clear I don't know which print I want. Whereas the next guy that walks up with a bag full of Don Rosa books, and he's like, oh, there's a chair right there, sit down. And he sits down and starts having a conversation with that guy, and I'm like, well, I want to be that guy.
We're going to be that guy next time.
I am going to be that guy next time. But, he's sitting down doing sketches for him in the covers, and talking about the favorite stories, and talking about the convention and the chilies. I heard the chili story 3 times about the difference between chilies and peppers. I obviously spent too much time there. But but I was just amazed at the number of prints and the options that I had, and I was overwhelmed. And, we've tried to come up with some ideas of what we could do maybe at Dragon Con in the coming year. And, I don't know what we could do other than I think the first thing that we can do is spread awareness of your film. Because honestly, I think people were to watch your film, they'd get an idea of this difference. Like it's shocking. Even, I mean, if I had just seen these pictures before, it would be like, oh, okay, that's really cool that he's got that big of a fan base. But watching your film, I really realize that there's a disconnect here for some reason, and I'd like to make up some of that lost, that space.
Well, I think Europeans will be angry because that's the only place that they can go where they won't have any lines.
Right. Yeah, and he was telling me about how excited he gets when people from Europe show up. He said, there's a group, and I don't know how large the group was, but the way he described it, it was a large group that come to Dragon Con every year. And he was like, they've usually shown up by now, but I'm expecting. So, I mean, it's really cool that they get that interaction, and they know, we're going to fly to Atlanta, Georgia to go meet Don Rosa because we can actually spend time with him. And they're mad at me right now because I'm giving that away.
Exactly. But I also think that, obviously it shows all that, but I also have the hopes that the film speaks beyond Don Rosa and Scrooge, in the idea that something that is famous cannot be famous where it's created, and there will always be fans of niche stuff, and there will always be fans everywhere that will always, it's part of our job as fans to raise awareness on the stuff we love and explain why it should be loved and what's in there and why there's a passion behind it, because that's how creation works, and that's how we got this without conventions, without all these guys, without all the super fans that came and find Carl Barks when nobody knew his name. We would not have Don Rosa, and without Don Rosa, we wouldn't have all the other ones. So yeah, that was one of the main point of making that.
Yeah, after reading all of his stories and watching your film, I feel like Mitch and I are both officially like a 10th Finnish, and we could move to Finland and just get along with everybody over there because we're all down with the Disney Ducks in Finland.
Definitely.
Now, Morgann, now that the film is out and people can get it, I know they can get it at the website. Will you have a presence anywhere? Like, are there any conventions you're planning on going with, taking the film to? Anything else going on? I know you guys had like a premiere when it came out.
Yeah, we're basically, we don't have anything official. Okay. Is the right answer. We're trying. We want to follow Don Rosa and have the film shown in the convention is going to be. We're in talks with a lot of people for that, because it was definitely shot to be shown on a big screen, and I would be sad that if we don't get to be shown on that many screens. But at the end of the day, to be perfectly honest, I am happy that people can actually have in their hand the DVD and the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray design I love, to be honest. I worked. Yeah,
the box art and the menus were just incredible for the Blu-ray.
And thank you. and basically the thing is that it exists and people can see it. We'll try to raise awareness more and try to contact more conventions, maybe distribute it in a country or two. But again, at the end of the day, the film exists, and you have no idea how miraculous this feels. It really, like, I was talking with part of the crew today, and some stuff really, like, I'll give you an example. I think that'll be easier. When we got that one production company, they immediately decided to bring the film to a film market, where basically you have a bunch of TV networks, movies, theaters, and everything, big production company or distributors, Netflix, all those guys that are in the same building and are looking catalogs and catalogs of films that are yet to be made. and decide, how much money they're going to put so the film can exist and they can obviously have all the rights. When the production company got that, they had a grant to go there because an entry fee would be 800 euros, basically $1,000 to get in. And they only had the money to have 3 people in there. So they flew in with, it was in France, they flew in with 1 producer and 2 associate producers. And I wanted to go, but I didn't have $1,000 to spend on that, and I didn't know what to do. But I was like, I'll be there. If you find anyone interested, I'll be in a cafe near. Just bring them to me, and we'll have a meeting in a cafe. After the first day, they had met 1 person, and I was growing impatient, and I was like, what else can I do? So I took a cardboard sign. And I wrote on it something like, if you want to help a young filmmaker striving to blah, 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 do his first documentary, talk with me. And I just had my sign and I was in front of the doors. Doing that, I had more meetings, but I'm saying more meetings. I had 20 meetings a day where they had 3 inside. And doing that, I met with all the big TV networks in France. I actually also talked with PBS from the US. Anyway, so we were talking about the projects and everything. And there we met a Danish producer that ultimately was the reason we were able to grab all the images you see in the Copenhagen part of the film. And even then, when we were set to film in Copenhagen, a week before, the director of photography quit because the pay wasn't that good. We hadn't done the Kickstarter yet. We were just doing it on our own money. And the thing is that I found someone on a Facebook that, like a director of photography from Copenhagen, that put it on our wall, and that attracted the cinematographer we have in the film. All this was in 2014, so that was way before we started actual production. But that's where we shot most of the Copenhagen shots. And to think that this whole project just was, started with a cardboard sign in front of the film market, that allowed us to do that shoot. And when we did that shoot, we did a trailer, and we announced the film officially 2 months later in Angoulême at the International Comic Festival in France with Don Rosa. And that started, the whole thing, the website, and then the Kickstarter, and blah, blah, blah. And this was, all, as I said, 3 years before it was made. It's just a full string of events, and I could tell so many stories that led to that point. There are interviews in the film of people. There's one person in the film that died before we actually got the chance to film him, and he gave, obviously is okay. He was really excited, and when I heard of his passing, I was devastated because I really wanted him in the film. But we were lucky enough to have 2 people that had already interviewed him with iPhones, and they agreed to give us the footage for free to be in the film. It's just insane that this film exists. So, if it gets screened in Comic-Cons, I'll be obviously overjoyed, but it's there. People can see it, and that is amazing in itself.
That's awesome. I think Scrooge would approve of the way that the documentary came to be, with a lot of grit and a lot of willpower.
Oh, it's definitely a Scrooge adventure. The first grant we got was actually we were offered to cheat at a contest, and because we said no publicly and using the character of Scrooge as an example and saying we're doing a film on Scrooge McDuck, obviously we can't cheat, and that's how we got first place, and we would not have been first place without that. So that was insane.
I love the light table idea that you had for having Don sketch the 12 Life and Times pictures, but now my child wants one of those light tables, and I don't know if I can afford one.
Well, actually, it's not a light table. We built this in a way where we had a glass drawing table that we found on Amazon, and we had a Lico, which is a theater spot that is sometimes used in cinema, but mostly used on theater stage or Broadway, or you name it. And we had that hang about, I'd say, 10 feet away from the table, with a very, like, the light is cut, so we would be sure that the portraits would imprint on the film stock. So yeah, it was all built, movie style.
Mm-hmm.
No, that was very creative. Who did the score for the film? Because I thought the score was really well done.
Oh, the score was done by Sebastian Ferreira, who's my composer. We worked on 10 films together, and I love this guy, and he's very creative. He's insanely fast. To give you an idea, the one of the emotional turning point of the film that we were mentioning before, the chapter called Dismal Disney, has a very I feel poignant score, and this was composed in one day. It's insane. I told him what I had in mind. We have a very good working relationship where he kind of sees what's in my brain. I do some doodles for him, and I've studied some music, so I know how to talk with him. And I told him, something that builds, blah blah blah. Do something, see what happens.
Yeah, that was building fast during the Dismal Disney chapter, and it felt like the Jaws. Do 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 do.
Yep.
I was getting a little nervous and sweaty. I was like, "Oh, what's gonna happen?"
It makes it kind of uncomfortable. I mean, to the point that you want it to be.
Yeah, it's good.
It was great.
Is really good. And the last score of the film is from Tuomas Olapainen's album, music inspired by the life and times. But I think it also matches very well. That song is actually called Goodbye Papa, which I felt was a very good title for an end music. And Sony also gave it to us for free, so we were really grateful for that. But again, I had to cut it mid-credit to give back some space to Sebastian's score, because, gosh, it actually, I really get feels when I hear it, and I've always thought that music was a character, and had to have its space in a film. But I think in a documentary it's really hard, because you don't want it to be just a background music, but you can't have it as a character because it can't take too much space. So we try to have that subtle extra, if you will, that is just there as the colors, as ink drops, that just there to remind you that you're in a magical place, a magical creative place.
I liked it when you went to the Angry Bird, my kids as well. They liked it when they saw the shots of the Angry Bird studio.
Oh yeah, that was really cool. We had, so I was contacted in through the website, the ScroogeMystery.com, by an Angry Birds programmer that told me, I'm a Don Rosa fan. I've been since I was born. I'm from Iceland. I'm working in Finland. I've been developing some video games, and I'll always think that Donald is the original Angry Bird. So I love that, and I love the idea of meeting someone, because most of the interviews we had thanks to contacts with Don Rosa. But this guy was out of the blue. We had no idea who he was. And I always loved the idea of someone speaking their native language in a completely different country. So we asked, I looked for settings, tried to see where we could film this and that would be appropriate and Angry Birds related. And there was an Angry Bird theme park in Tampere in Finland. So I was like, oh, cool, perfect. We'll go there if they allow us. So I called them, and it's insane because it's the size of it wouldn't be Magic Kingdom. It would be one of the smaller Disney World park, but still, like it's an actual park. It's gigantic. You have roller coasters everywhere and everything. So I've never thought that they would reply, and they were like, yeah, we can close the park for 4 hours for you to film. You'll be on Sunday from this point to this point.
Wow, that's cool.
Okay, let's go. So we went there. It was a little creepy, to be honest, because you're in a park that is empty. So imagine walking in Disney World and there's no one there.
It's a dream.
It's very disturbing. Yeah, I know. Right.
That'll never happen. Yeah.
But it has a little like Zombieland type of a vibe in there. But anyway, we found the shot, we were filming, and two things happened on that shoot that was really funny. The first one is that Ari, who talks there, hasn't talked Icelandic for a long time. He was in Finland for the past 6 years and had been speaking English since then. So his own native language was rusted, and he could not remember words like, video games and stuff like that. So we had to do so many takes. And I was seeing obviously the clock ticking, and I was getting nervous that we would be flowed with people at some point. And the other thing that happened is that in the middle of his interview, they started turning on the park's music. And obviously, I can't have Angry Birds theme music in the film. We don't have the rights.
I was going to ask about that.
Because you can't do any, you can't cut the words, you can't do anything, like it was a nightmare. But we managed to call the manager, and they cut. Like, it's so surreal to be inside a park and you're calling someone saying, so sorry, we're recording this. Could you please cut the power for your entire park for just 10 more minutes? Like, yeah, no problem. And then you don't have anything again.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because it's one of the bloopers on the disc. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it is actually. Yeah, I love the bloopers because it's something that you wouldn't see in a documentary, and it's something that I feel gives you a better insight of how the shooting went and what was the ambience on set and everything. And yes, you have that moment in bloopers where I'm on the phone nervous, and then the music just cuts down and you're like, okay, well, we can do, thank you.
Let's get going.
Yes.
Steven Spielberg is in the film. Did he ever see the finished product or call you back?
No, he didn't.
He's still not called me back either.
That he's in the film. That's the only problem we have. You're right. I should definitely text him. Give me a second.
Yeah, right.
Hey, if he's got a minute, tell him we'll pull him up on Skype and he can join us.
Yeah, we can help plug one of his films or something.
Yeah. Morgan, one of the things that we wanted to do when we got a chance to speak with you again, like I was saying earlier, you were telling us about your favorite Don Rosa stories, and you inspired us, even before the documentary, you inspired us to reach out to Fantagraphics. And we reached out to them. We were like, hey, we're a podcast and a website, and we're thinking about doing this. And they were like, absolutely, we'd like to help you with that. And so we've got a pretty cool relationship with Fantagraphics now. We're very thankful for that. We owe that to you. And because you inspired us to reach out to them. And so I've almost read all 88 stories. So Pirates read them all. But we thought we would tell you, since you were able to tell us about your favorite stories, we'd kind of tell you what has become our favorite stories.
Oh, cool.
So, Pirate, did you want to begin or you want me to?
No, I want you to.
And we're not going to go like a top 5 or anything because our listeners know that becomes an hour on its own. But Volume 5 of Fantagraphics is by far filled with my favorite, the majority of my favorite stories. And I don't know that there were any stories that I didn't like, but these were the top of my list. The Richest Duck in the World. I had to go, and I read it with having not read Carl Barks' introduction of Scrooge McDuck in Christmas on Bear Mountain. So then I had to go back and read Bear Mountain and put the story in the middle. But that is one of my favorite stories. I thought it was a great ending, a great stopping point for the Life and Times storyline, and I loved seeing him, Scrooge make that reconnect with his family, and then watch him go from that really, really decrepit man, in the beginning. And you notice I called him man instead of duck now. In the beginning of Carl Barks' story, to where he's running around beating up the Beagle Boys by the end of that story. I loved seeing that and seeing him come alive again. Also, the invader of Fort Duckburg is one of my favorite stories. I grew up watching DuckTales. I love the woodchucks. I love the new show and how they reference the woodchucks. And seeing that, I really love that story. And then Guardians of the Lost Library. Those three may be my three favorite. I don't really know how I could rank them. But I really, really enjoyed that story. So thank you. I wanted to say thank you.
Well, again, wait until you read the letter from home. But yeah, I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah, I enjoyed the original one, The Son of the Sun. I thought was really well done, and I can't believe that was his first out of the gate with doing these duck stories. I love Flintheart Glomgold, and I think he did a great job on that. And I love the Life and Time story where he introduces Flintheart Glomgold. And the Three Caballeros stories are also really well done. And I think adds a lot to those characters.
I actually didn't know about the Three Caballeros before reading Don Rosa, so that was a backward discovery for me on that side.
Yeah, and they're kind of making a really good. They're really popular right now because they're putting them in. They were recently in the DuckTales reboot, and there's a whole Three Caballeros new series that is coming out next year on Disney streaming service. So people are Three Caballeros hungry, and I've been pointing them to these comics to get some more knowledge on them. Great stories.
And I feel Don Rosa's humor, that's very particular, works really well with those characters.
So at the end of your documentary, you got to visit the comic book bin. Can you
that was
talk
awesome.
about that experience and how it was to hold Batman first issue?
Oh my gosh!
I can't believe you got to hold that.
Oh,
You look nervous, like I don't want to bend it. It's in this little sleeve. It's not like in the hardcore glass case. It's in a little sleeve.
No back on it either. The cardboard back wasn't there. I was like, what's going on?
No, this is insane. Well, actually, we removed the back ones because you couldn't see on camera what it looked like.
Okay.
So we actually got to open it and touch the actual comic book without the cover. That was more nervous. But yeah, that actually you can see in the bloopers. There's a part where Don Rosa is like, "Who stole that? Who stole the number one?"
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the film was always going to end on the comics. There was a first version we shot in January that were reshot in July. You can see that on the Blu-ray, the alternate ending. It had to be a full circle on how Don Rosa would not be Don Rosa without his fan persona and his collective habit. And when we went there, I remember that he really wanted us to go through the EC comics or the obscure, well, not obscure because the ECs are well known, but they're not as known as Batman. And I kept telling him, for the movies, I'm really sorry, but if it has to have an impact, it has to be an issue that everybody will understand immediately the value that it has. And if you have Action Comics #1 or the one with Superman or Batman #1, then that would be good. And the first one around, we didn't have enough time, so we didn't do it. We only showed the EC and everything. But when we got back in July, I was like, no, there's no way I'm letting that go. We need to go see the Batman #1. And I was like, okay, well, no problem.
Yeah, I would immediately look for Amazing. I would have looked for Amazing Fantasy #15 just so I could hold Spider-Man.
I think we showed,
because I'm sure that's in there somewhere.
No, but I think we show it in very close up. But when we open, there's Amazing first issue and Spider-Man. I think we show it in the film. It's just the thing is that because we didn't want to have me opening all the boxes, and because it would have been pointless, we had that little montage right after I hold Batman #1, and we had the first issue of X-Men, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, I think. It might not be in there. And then a bunch of others that Don Rosa really wanted to be on screen. So I was like, okay, no, you get to. But my producer, Sam Rappold, is a huge comic book fan. And he was the one pointing at me like, we need to show that one. Like, there's no way we're not showing that one.
It kind of inspired me. I want to have my own like comic book bin shed in my backyard or something, because I think everybody should have that now.
Oh yeah,
I really liked what he said. It's kind of changed my mentality of collecting a little bit, to be honest, because you're always searching for something in mint or near mint. And I like what he said about, I just wanted it. I wanted to finish the collection. I want, when I come across it, I got the impression that if he comes across the issue that he needs at the convention, it doesn't matter what quality it's in. He's going to go ahead and get it so that he can add it to the collection.
Yep.
And I've been going back and looking at some of his issues on eBay, thinking about, Pirates already started a collection of those individual issues, and I've been going through and like, I'm not going to bid on that one, or I'm not going to buy that one because of the quality. And now I'm like, maybe I'll just go ahead and get it while it's available.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it shows in the documentary. Don Rosa is Scrooge McDuck. It became Scrooge McDuck at a point in his life, and he doesn't have money. He has comics, but the one thing that you know about Scrooge is that every coin in the comic bin, in the money bin, has a story to tell. And I think for Don Rosa it's also the same. Like, he can tell you wherever he got that comic, what convention it was, what it meant, why he got it, and that's what's most important for him. And the lesson in that is that I love when he says, and this is spoilers for the end of the film, but when he talks about how you're working for someone else when you're accumulating value, because at the end of the day, what are you doing? Are you going to be reselling them? Is it just a value collection? What are you doing? And for him, just the idea that he can read them and enjoy them and collect them because that's what he likes to do. I think it's a powerful lesson for fans that you don't need to have the #1. You don't need to have the most pristine collection ever. Just have fun, have memories, because that's also how you build your life.
It is in the film. It's true message. Absolutely. Yeah. Enjoyed it. Loved it. Morgann, it's a great film. I'm so thankful for the disc, and for, you pouring into it and doing this. And thank you again for coming on our podcast to talk about it. We really want the fans, the Duck fans that listen to our show to check out the Scrooge Mystery, to get a hold of a copy. You had said earlier you had a code. Did you want to go ahead and give that code to them?
Well, because this is DuckTalks, the code is Launchpad, and it gives you free shipping.
Awesome.
Obviously, Launchpad is going to give you free shipping.
Oh man,
You know us so well.
Fan base loves shipping, so they will be happy for free shipping.
That is awesome.
So yeah, I'll put that code for the entire month of December. So if people want to have it for Christmas, then they'll have it for free for Christmas.
Oh, excellent.
Thanks for that. When does the Kickstarter for the Carl Barks documentary start? we need a sequel to this. This film was too good.
Uh-huh.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm still busy with my own non-duck projects, but I'll definitely consider it.
Well, when you do, we'll definitely have you on to talk about it. No,
It's
seriously.
always a pleasure to be on.
Yeah.
And if you ever want to do a commentary on the film or whatever, just ring me. You have my contacts, so I'll always be happy to talk with you guys.
Well, thanks a lot. We really appreciate that. It's fun to have you on.
Yeah, and if you do get back to the States, following him around for a convention or taking the film somewhere, and it's our general area, let us know, because that's something we're interested in taking part in.
Oh, definitely. That would be amazing.
We'll be watching the Twitter, on Twitter and everywhere. We'd love to. Like I said, we're trying to come up with some ideas for a couple of conventions on our anyway. So, but yeah, thanks so much for joining us again. Thank you for your work, and it's been great. Everyone, go to the ScroogeMystery.com and order your copy. That's the best place to go to order it right now, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's the only place where you can order it.
The only place. Is there any other? I know that I saw online there was some talk about the digital copy. Are you guys still in the process of looking at options for that?
Yeah, definitely. The main problem is how to protect it.
Right.
So we're in talks with a lot of things, and also because we're also talking with small distributors, one that starts with net and ends with Flix, and we can't just give the link to everybody, because even if people pay for it, it's harder in deals and contracts about it. So we're trying to play it safe to see where it leads, because as much as I want people to watch it right now, I know that if it gets on a platform like Netflix or Amazon, more people can have access to it, and that's definitely one of our main goal. It's definitely not to make money. I don't think we'll ever make money with this film, but the important for me is to raise awareness, have people watch it everywhere, and we need to do it in a clever way, and that takes time, sadly.
Yeah, well, it's a good call to protect it. I agree. I hope it gets to a digital platform just so I could introduce it to more people who maybe wouldn't, seek out a disc. However, I'm going to say that for those fans that are Don Rosa fans, Scrooge McDuck fans, any type of Duck fans that are listening to this is a documentary worth owning. And the Blu-ray, I highly recommend, if you're capable, if you have a Blu-ray player, the Blu-ray edition is beautiful, and it's the quality is phenomenal. It's clear. It's great. Get a hold of a copy. Take advantage of that free shipping in December. We're going to get that out to our listeners as soon as possible, and get a hold of it. You're a collector. You're a Scrooge fan. You have to be a collector. You have to have this disc.
I totally agree.
We had a great time with Morgann. Thanks for listening to the podcast this week, and thanks for listening every week. If this was your first time checking us out, it's not our typical format. We normally go a lot into talking about the news around the show and around different items of the Disney afternoon. Like we'll be talking Monday about the 90s night that's coming to Disneyland. We'll be talking about different things that are going on within the fandom. We'll also be talking about Duck merch, the merchandise that's coming out. I think we've all been hard at work gathering our Funko Black Friday Mystery Mini Disney Afternoon collection. So we'll be talking about that, I'm sure. But anyway, thanks for checking us out. I hope you will come back and listen to Monday's episode. It'll be episode 52 of Duck Talks. During the week, you can check us out at ducktalks.com. That's our blog. And you can find us on Twitter at DuckTalks. If you have a question for us, or you'd like to make a suggestion, or maybe you've got some kind of feedback, maybe we got something totally wrong in the last few episodes, which probably happened, you can always send that to ducktalkspod@gmail.com. Well, that's it for this week. Until next time, stay glom golden. Good night. Or goodbye, because it may be morning. Might be afternoon. Hope you had a good lunch. Good breakfast. Good dinner. Anyway, bye.